We can assume that she was a young woman, probably a teenager, and more than likely she never came close to wearing flowing silk robes of white or soft blue. I can guarantee you that. I doubt that anyone ever saw her with a golden halo. You see, in reality, Mary was just a run-of-the-mill, small-town girl who wore ordinary homespun clothes of brown or gray. She spent her days helping her mother cook, mend, and go to the well for water. When we first meet Mary, she's engaged to a man named Joseph, whom she probably didn't know very well. Because in those days, marriages were arranged by other family members. And then suddenly, this plain, ordinary young girl is thrown into another world. Out of the blue, an angel, who according to the artist has huge white flapping wings. You can imagine that. He shows up and Mary's calm life is shattered into a million pieces. The angel's news packs a wall. You're going to be a mother, Mary. The Holy Spirit will enter your body, and wham! In a few months, you're going to have a child. Explain that to your nosy neighbors, your parents, and Joseph. Mary's world was suddenly torn apart and turned upside down. You see, Nazareth was a remote village in the Galilee region. It was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business. Not only that, most of the villagers were related to one another in some way or other. So gossip spread like wildfire, and you could just imagine what Mary would have to deal with once word got around that she was pregnant. She and her family would be disgraced. Could anything have been more frightening for a young girl living in a very traditional village a few thousand years ago? In reality, it was a terrible dilemma. I doubt that Mary's expression would be one of quiet joy and anticipation. If anything, I imagine Mary was terrified, not only having to deal with Gabriel and his wings, but the news that he brought. I would think that at the very least, Mary would ask, who came up with this crazy idea? And who picked me of all people? Don't you realize that I have a life to live here in this village, and I'm not at all sure I want to put up with all the gossip, not to mention the aches and pains of pregnancy. Don't you wonder if maybe, just maybe, Mary thought about giving the good old wing-flapping Gabriel boot? Go find someone else, Gabe. I'm not the one you want. You see, Mary did have a choice, and she could have chosen to say, no thank you to God. But that's not what she did. Just like us, she could have said no to God. After all, how often have we said no thank you to God? We've told God that it just isn't the right time for us to get involved or to stick our necks out. Just leave us alone, God. We love you lots and lots, but we love you the most when you keep your distance from us. Don't get too close to us, God. We might just end up having to live a totally different life. And right now, that just isn't what we want at all. Indeed, Mary could have been just like us and said, no thanks. The gospel writer assures us that Mary accepts the news from Gabriel. Mary did stick her neck out. She risked everything in order to say yes to God. And not only that, she declares anything is possible with God. And as if that wasn't enough, the next thing we know, Mary leaves home to visit her cousin Elizabeth, who is also pregnant, which is another amazing story. Here was Mary's cousin, an old woman who found herself pregnant way beyond her childbearing years. Doesn't that throw fear into all of us? Evidently, the gospel writer wants us to get the point that anything is possible with God at work in our lives. Mary even sings a wonderful song of joy and love. She sings out to God with assurance that only a mother knows. One day, she sings, the high and mighty will be put in their places, and the poor and oppressed will be brought out of the depths of their sorrow. One day, tyrants will be knocked off their high horses, and victims will be pulled out of the mud. Mary sings for joy. Indeed, she knows beyond any doubt that anything is possible with God. Indeed, God can work wonders with very little. God even works wonders with us if we're wise enough to know it. We must admit that we love miracles, especially this time of year. We're truly in the mood for miracles. And the story of Mary and Elizabeth is one of miracles. Once again, we're reminded that God can turn everything upside down, and in the most ordinary, mundane lives, extraordinary events can happen that change everything. Edwina Gately is a Roman Catholic lay minister who writes and teaches. She has also served in many kinds of street ministries. It is part of Edwina's discipline to listen to the spirit of wisdom within her and try to cooperate with whatever God may want her to do. Once, when she was in an argument trying to convince the Roman Catholic hierarchy to empower lay ministry, she heard an inner voice telling her to say, "I am the God of the back door." And when I understood that God creeps in around the edges, the God of surprises will come round from the back. God's surprises tend to slip in gently and elusively. One evening, Edwina was following her instinct and found herself led to a back street in a poor area of Chicago. Something told her it was important for her to be in a certain area in a certain place. Maybe she would experience God's presence there. She found herself led to a tavern with boarded-up windows, dingy, small, and gritty. It was dark inside. She could feel the bodies, hear the loud music and dancing. She went to the front of the bar. What am I doing here? She asked herself, yet instinctively knew she was supposed to be there. Edwina went up and sat on a bar stool. "Glass of wine, please." Thinking, "Come on, God, what now?" Then the door opened. A woman in her late 50s came in carrying a plastic bag. She walked to the front, climbed on a bar stool next to Edwina, hit her fist on the bar and said, "Hey, Joe, give me a jug." He gave her a jug of wine. The woman turned to Edwina and said, "Hi, hon." "Hello," Edwina responded. "Are you hungry?" "Well, a little bit," Edwina muttered, trying to be open. "Thank God for that. I haven't eaten for 3 days, and I just stole this loaf of bread from the grocery store, and I've been looking for someone to share it with." The woman leaned down into the plastic bag and took out a jumbo loaf of sliced bread. She opened it, took out a big white slice of bread with no butter or anything on it, took out a can of tuna fish, which had no lid on it, took her fist and grabbed a fistful of tuna, slapped it on the dry bread, took another slice and stuck it on top and said, "Here you are, hon." Edwina mumbled, "Thank you," looking at the huge jumbo sandwich of dry bread and tuna fish. "You know," well nowadays. Edwina was thinking, what's she talking about? But, said the woman, you're still young, hon. You're still young. You know, with my experience, I know where all the guys are. I know where the tricks are. With my experience in your body, we could team up. We'd make a good team, and it would just help me so much. We'd be able to manage. Would you help me? Would you please work with me, hon? Oh, my God, thought Edwina. She thinks I'm a prostitute, and she wants to partner with me. What am I going to do? With an apologetic tone, she replied to the woman, I'm sorry, I'm not a prostitute. I'm a Catholic lay minister. The woman's eyes got big. What are you doing here? What are you doing here in this place, hon? Edwina replied, I'm having a drink. Don't you know what this place is? Asked the woman. This is a hooker bar. This is where guys come to pick up girls. We ain't never had a Christian minister in this place before. Ain't had nobody like that. And the woman put her arms around Edwina, and she began to tell her life story. Her story of abuse, her story of violence. All they did in that dirty place that night was hold on to each other on those bar stools. Edwina held her and tucked her and rocked her and sobbed with her. And she told her life story. All Edwina could do was just hold the woman in her embrace. As she left the bar that night, Edwina thought to herself, I went there hoping that somehow, because I dared to be present in a place where I felt I needed to be that night, maybe God would break through. I thought I was bringing that with me, Edwina writes. And I sat there. The old lady came in and she brought bread. She broke it and she gave it to me. She brought the fish and she took it and she gave it to me. We took the wine and we shared it. Then she embraced me and we kissed one another and she told me her story. Edwina knew in the bar that night that was a Eucharistic, a Holy Communion event. And she felt the power of the Spirit saying, I will show you my wisdom and I will show you my ways if you see things differently and if you dare to be open and follow in the places where I dance and move. Barbara Brown Taylor writes this, we have a choice in our lives to say yes or no. Yes, I will live this life that is being held out to me, or no, I will not. Yes, I will explore unexpected turns of events, or no, I will not. You could say no to your life, but you can rest assured that no angels will ever trouble you. But if we say yes to our lives, we may end up taking part in a thrilling and dangerous scheme with no scripts or guarantees. You can agree to smuggle God into the world inside your own body. And then Barbara asks, how are you bearing God in this world? Sometimes God manages to work in the most mysterious ways. Just imagine God using a plain, ordinary young woman to be the mother of a baby who's a gift from God to the world. Isn't it amazing how God can make anything possible? There's no telling what will come when we allow God to be born in us. After all, it just might be that with God all things are possible. Miracles do happen. Merry Christmas. Amen. Along with joys, we have concerns as well. Are there concerns to be lifted up this morning? We're happy to see Jan and Barb in worship. Let's keep in mind and in our thoughts and prayers all of those who continue to suffer with a variety of illnesses and concerns, and especially those who are affected by COVID-19. And just keep all of those folks in our prayers. Let us come to God in prayer. Almighty One, we rejoice in you, our Redeemer, with songs that come from the very depths of our souls. Some of our songs sing your glories. Others seek your healing. Still others cry out for deliverance. Today we know that the world may not always yearn for our songs, but it yearns for Mary's. We long for the world